I'm recording the session, so you may have just heard, I'm not sure if that sounds for me or not, or everybody. So yeah, feel free to keep your cameras on or off. I don't mind as long as you're there. And then this recording will be available on the IFAN website and hopefully the SUFRA website as well, so we'll be able to access it. And just to let everybody know that at the end of the session, I'll send out the resources that have been shown throughout. And if you have anything useful and kind of relevant to the topic that you would like to go with that information, I know Emma from Christians Against Poverty has sent through some resources. If anyone has anything else that they would like shared at the end, then feel free to send them through, and they can kind of go out with the resources to create a bit of a pack. I'm just scrolling through. I'll mute you if you don't mute yourselves.
I just looked at her screen and said, "Oh, we were the same meeting."
I can't see who that is. Yeah, if you could just make sure you're muted, then that would be great. Okay, so I think we'll get started. So welcome to this session. First of all, it's really fantastic to see so many different organisations, so many of our different partners on one call together. It's really great. Hang on, sorry, I'm going to have to find out who's...
Yeah, Nina. So if you hover over the chat, you should have a button if you're the host that says mute all. If you click on the click on participants.
Hi.
I'm sure it's there.
I'm that awful person that's being kind of guided like a little grandma on here. Sorry, guys. There we go. Found it. Thank you, whoever that was. Okay. So yeah, first of all, thank you so much for joining. It's really great to see so many different partners on the call. It's really great. I know, especially at this time when everybody's really busy, but it's we're really grateful for everyone to kind of spare an hour for what hopefully will be a really informative and interesting session with some kind of really useful takeaways. So yeah, we're really grateful for everyone who has taken an hour, sorry, to join us. This is going to be our agenda for the session. So I'll start first of all, and I'll be speaking a little bit about the unsustainability of food aid and SUFRA's response to that, kind of how we're working to navigate that. We'll hear from Sophia Johnson from Citizens Advice Brent, speaking a little bit about the kind of landscape of crisis, giving us a little bit of an example of the kind of cases that they see. We'll be hearing from Mo Jammer from Brent Hub, speaking about the cash that's available in Brent, hopefully going through and letting us know what is available for the guests that are in financial crisis that we're all seeing and supporting. And then we'll hear from Sabine Goodwin from the Independent Food Aid Network, talking a little bit more generally about the cash first approach, introducing the leaflet to us, and also perhaps hearing a little bit about kind of how this is working elsewhere in the country, because this is, yeah, it's a kind of a national push, I guess, towards the cash first approach. So I've just popped my email address on here. I think lots of you have it. Most of you I'm kind of in touch with relatively often, and if not, then you'll have received the event invitation from me. But if not, then do feel free to take down my email, and yeah, feel free to get in touch if there's any questions or if there's anything you want to kind of discuss further beyond the session. And so I'll get started. So a very, very kind of brief introduction to SUFRA before we start talking about all of the issues around food aid. So first and foremost, we were founded in 2014 as a food banking kitchen. So they are our kind of core services. But I would say that they don't exactly define what we do. We offer a really broad spectrum of holistic support to our guests, centered around the kind of following principles and values. These are what kind of dictate the work that we do. So I'll just take a second to read those for you. So we take a holistic approach based on human rights. We are embedded in the local community, and we respect the dignity of our guests and the needs of the planet. And I guess it's kind of always thinking about adhering to these principles and values, and these are what drive what we're doing, and these are the reasons, I suppose, that we're kind of thinking a little bit about the food bank and the food bank model, as I'm going to discuss in a minute, and thinking how we can stay true to these principles and values and best serve the guests that come to our doorstep. So like I said, we have a really broad spectrum of services that we offer here at SUFRA. Many of you will know the community garden that we've got. If you don't, I encourage you to come down and take a visit. It's a really beautiful space here on St. Raphael's Estate. We run lots of different AQA accredited courses. We have our advice service, but for the kind of purpose of this presentation, I'm going to be speaking in depth just about our food aid services. So they take two forms. They are our food bank and our ready meal service. So our food bank at the moment is serving on average around 300 individuals per week. And we saw not almost 332, exactly 332% increase in referrals in 2020. Our ready meal service is equally as busy. This year so far we've served over 25,000 meals, and that's the service that supports our most vulnerable demographics. So it supports those guests who are often immobile and with more severe long-term health conditions. So really those guests who are, that coupled with financial crisis, really those guests who are extremely vulnerable. So sort of what I want to do here essentially is just paint a picture of the demands that we're seeing. And to be honest, I'm sure that this unprecedented, if you like, demands and spike in demand that we saw last year in particular is unsurprising to you all. I'm sure all organisations that are working with guests that are in financial crisis or vulnerable in some way have seen a real spike in demand for their services. And so essentially what we know is that across Brent, we have a real need. Individuals and families that are in financial crisis, many of them who are turning up on our doorstep at the food bank. So it may seem a little surprising, it may seem a little odd that SUFRA, that you may know as SUFRA Food Bank, is going to be talking about the unsustainability of food aid and kind of the issues with the food bank model, and talking about how food banks are not the most efficient or dignified way of supporting guests. So I'm hopefully going to clarify that a little bit and kind of go through the reasons why we think this, and then think a little bit about what that means for kind of next steps, or how we should be supporting guests. So the first issue is food parcels are a short-term sticky plaster solution. So we know that it is unsustainable for someone to live on food parcels. We also know that food parcels do nothing of solving the kind of root cause of somebody's lack of access to food. They may be hungry one week, the food parcel solves that immediate problem, they're no longer hungry that week, but the problem isn't guaranteed to kind of not be there again the next week. They're still going to be hungry the next week. The food parcel does nothing to kind of address and support the guest with the real underlying issue. I think this is a kind of apt time as well to kind of recognize that food poverty, or that our guests experience it, isn't an issue in itself. It's not an issue in a silo. Actually, food poverty is simply poverty. The guests that we're seeing that are unable to buy food are in financial crisis, and that's because they don't have enough money to cover their basic necessities. It may mean that guests are making decisions between lots of basic necessities, such as putting a roof over their head and feeding themselves. So food poverty, but it's poverty itself, and food parcels don't do anything to kind of address that. The second point, it's double, triple and quadruple handling of food. And this point kind of speaks to the inefficiency of the way that food banks are run. There is so much that goes into the kind of operations and logistics of creating that food parcel to hand over to a guest at the food bank, including buying the food, sourcing the food, organising our stockroom, packing up the parcels in lots of different ways, lots of different sizes, and then distributing it to the guest. There's a lot involved in that whole process. There are in fact organisations that have kind of tried to quantify and put a currency on all of those volunteer hours and all of the labour that goes into that process, and I think it kind of triples or maybe even quadruples the food parcel kind of price if you take into account all of that labour. So it's an extremely inefficient way, seen as there are supermarkets on every corner, and that a lot of that labour can be taken out if we kind of think about the problem in the right way. The next point is that food banks and food parcels, as they are, offer guests little agency over their food choices, and it's also a much less dignified option. So especially with the restrictions that the pandemic have kind of given us and that COVID has caused, often guests aren't able to choose exactly what goes into their food parcel. And even in a scenario where we can take into account maybe dietary requirements or allergies, the chances of us or any food bank being able to curate a food parcel that mimics exactly what someone would go out and buy for themselves if they had the cash in their pocket is very, very low. So just kind of understanding that it isn't just about what goes into the food parcel, but it's also about being able to choose the brand that you want or being able to choose the shop that it comes from. And all of these choices are taken away from the guest or the individual when they're coming to a food bank. Also, that idea of dignity, I mean, rightly so or not, there's a lot of stigma around coming to a food bank. And it shouldn't mean that if you're in financial crisis, you have to kind of access that stigmatized service in that way. My last point on this is that there's a risk that food banks are going to become embedded in our social infrastructure. We know that with the demand that we've seen throughout the pandemic, we have so many more guests who are accessing the service long term, guests that, due to the pandemic or not, are experiencing, you know, the economic fallout of the kind of current climate, and they're needing support longer term, and it isn't sustainable for and it isn't appropriate for food banks to become embedded in our social infrastructure in such a way that they almost resemble another benefit. You know, when you're in crisis and you hit rock bottom, that the avenues that you access include a food bank kind of as given. So in a really kind of superficial view, those are kind of the four main points that that lead us to think that there's got to be another way, which is where we've started looking towards the kind of cash first approach. So thinking a little bit about SUFRA in particular, and how we're aiming to incorporate the cash first approach in the way that we work. So the first one is in our advice service. So from the very beginning, we've always recognised that the food bank can't work alone, and we need to be supporting those guests and addressing those underlying needs as well. So from day one, since there's been a food bank at SUFRA, we've had our advice service. We've got several full-time advisors that work with our food bank guests, and last year we managed to access £96,000, or sorry, we managed to increase the annual income of our beneficiaries by £96,000, their annual income, which is a really incredible figure, and shows that we are all about kind of income maximisation for our guests and realising that, you know, the cash is so much better off in their pocket and just thinking about ways to get it there. The second one is it's kind of written into our food bank policy. So throughout the pandemic, we saw guests being referred to the food bank, using their allocation of parcels, being referred again, using their allocation of parcels, being referred again. And we were in crisis mode, everybody was, but it was once the dust settled that we kind of thought, hang on a minute, you know, how can we be ensuring that guests are accessing all of the benefits that they're eligible for? They're accessing any crisis grants, any COVID grants, you know, any grants for energy bills, etc., that they're eligible for, in order to put money in their pocket to be able to you know, afford their basic necessities themselves. So we wrote it into our food bank policy. So now guests can access 6 parcels from the food bank in 6 consecutive weeks, or those 6 parcels as and when they wish. When they reach their 6th parcel, due to our partnership that we've got with Brent Hubs, all food bank guests now speak to an advisor at that point. So it's a conversation kind of completely around support. So it's not about eligibility or anything else. It's about talking to those guests and seeing, is there anything else that you're eligible for? You know, is there a reason that your universal credit has stopped? Or what is it that's, you know, what is it that we can do to get more money in your pocket, to figure out a kind of pathway for you towards financial stability and independence from using the food bank. The next thing we're doing is working really closely with Sabine and the Independent Food Aid Network in developing the Cash First and Worrying About Money leaflets. So I won't go into this in too much detail because Sabine is going to kind of introduce the leaflet shortly and show us a little bit more about kind of how it works and how to use it. But it's about knowing where to signpost guests so that they can access more money, essentially. And this is this is also about working with all of our referral agencies, so essentially everyone that is on this call right now, and kind of making sure that that leaflet isn't just used at the kind of last resort option of a food bank. So we want to make sure that before guests are even referred to the food bank, they may have spoken to somebody at one of our referral agencies, so at lots of our partner organisations across the borough, that will have spoken to them about their options, and hopefully kind of introduce those options to them so that our guests are aware of what their options are before they get to a food bank. So kind of taking it back a step. And the very last point is creating a focus shift, so increasing the campaigning and advocacy work around the bigger issues. So you know, we're the last resort when a guest is in crisis, and we want to make sure that our referral agencies are supporting guests to access the cash that they need. However, we also need to be looking at the bigger picture. So the issue ultimately is systemic. You know, we have a welfare system that isn't fit for purpose. We need our guests to be able to access affordable and accessible housing, jobs that have wages that are enough to cover their basic costs, work contracts that, you know, give them stability. And so, you know, this kind of systemic change that we hope to make bottom up will only work if we all kind of make some noise together. So it's also the kind of objective of this event today is kind of getting everybody on the same page and really thinking about how we can work better together and really improve our partnership working to make some noise on these bigger issues, so that while we're working to support guests that are in financial crisis, we're also working to make some noise about all of the issues that are preventing our guests from being able to have enough money in the first place. So that's all from me. I'm just over time, I think. Apologies. We're going to hear now from Sophia from Citizens Advice. Feel free, if you have any questions. I realize I've really whizzed through that and I have kind of one speed and it's double time. So if you do have any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat, and we can go through them at the end, or we can pick them up as you wish. So Sophia, over to you. I'll share your presentation.
Thank you so much, Nina, and good morning, everyone. I think majority of you may know me by now, and my focus is on a particular case that we very recently closed, and it really epitomized the use of the whole cash first approach. Nina, just to let you know, for those of you, to give you an idea of where we are, is that every year we see thousands of people coming for us for help, you know. Sorry about that. To resolve their problems, and just focusing on April to September of this year, we saw 3,929 people. We dealt with their issues, and out of that, as a result of that, that has generated just under £2 million that we've saved by government and public services alone, within the 2 quarters, not last year, within the 2 quarters. What that actually means is that £10.58 for every £1 that's actually invested in our service. Nina. I'm going to focus on a particular, as I mentioned, a case study, and we're going to call this client Nina, and it just so happens to be, sorry about that, Nina. And this just epitomized the sort of cases that we have to deal with when adopting cash first approach. We're so happy that this approach is now being introduced throughout. This is an approach that when dealing with money and debt matters, we've all, at the Citizens Advice, Brent, we've always tried to adopt. What is it that is allowing this individual or this family to be in this particular problem? What are the circumstances? And in order to establish that, like SOFRA, we also take a holistic view of looking at people's cases. Now, in this particular example, over the last 2 months, out of that 3,900 odd people that we saw, 2,330 of them had money-related matters, whether it's a debt issue, a consumer issue, or welfare benefits. So you can do if those of you who are very good at percentages, that's an extremely high percentage of the clients that we see that we need to be dealing with their money matters. Nina's story shows how we help people resolve their problems and why this, the cash first approach is extremely important. Next slide, please, Nina. So Nina is a young parent. She had 3 children. She's of Black Caribbean background. She lives in an accommodation that's provided by a local housing association. And the reason why she approached us initially was because she was behind in paying her rent. And that was her main focus. When we started to question her more deeply, we discovered that she had also an unsecured loan. She had a National Health Service business charge, a penalty notice, and a historic water arrears with Thames Water. And they were on the verge of actually seeking a county court judgment for payment. The threat of being evicted and going to court was making Nina extremely anxious, and this strain exaggerated her existing health conditions because, as our advisor discovered, she was living with a long-term illness. So basically what this actually is showing you, that majority of the people that we see, and I'm sure that many of you also see, are cases where it's not just a one-off situation. The issue is, the problem is not just one problem, it's highly multifaceted. And as a result of that, it impacts not only on the actual individual that you're seeing, but if they're in a family situation, it's impacting their family partners as well as their children. Next slide, Nina. Now, Nina was referred to our in-house. When she approached us, we gave her a quick assessment, and it immediately was identified that she really needed help around her money. And we've made a referral to what our money advice team, which is based in-house at the Citizens Advice Brent. They found out of all those debts that I've just mentioned, it totaled over £7,000. And as I mentioned earlier, she was living with a long-term illness. All of this added pressure, and there were serious signs of dementia, which obviously is a part of mental health. So those are the sort of attributes, if you want to call it that this client has actually come in to the service with. Now, during the pandemic, as it mentions here, our in-person services were suspended. They are now actually opening up. You can now actually have in-person appointments with our trained advisors at the 8 family welfare centres. We're also at Brent hubs. And although the telephone helped to a certain point and to a different type of client, it did not help for all. And I'm sure that most of you recognize that whilst we were working extremely hard during the whole pandemic crisis. We also, in particular, our help to claim team, who are the team who helps people apply for universal credit, had an increase of 15% of web chat and email. Later on, all of the information of how to access the service will be shared with you. Now, turning back to Nina. Thank you, Nina. Next slide. When she was referred to our money advisor, we immediately entered Nina into the government-backed scheme Breathing Space. I'm hoping that majority of you who deals with clients, and you're dealing with clients with money problems, you know about the Breathing Space. If not, all information can be found about this on the gov.uk website. It's important that you get to know about it, because it allows clients to have literally that breathing space to get themselves organized. As you can appreciate, like in Nina's case, we identified all her debts. What comes with that is the paperwork, and a massive amount of paperwork. And we need time to organize those paperwork, contact the creditors, start negotiating with them, and having this breathing space of 30 days or how many, the length of time it is, will help the client just kind of take a breath. And with our support, we can begin organizing. And this is where we actually explain the various options that clients can take in order to reduce or help them manage their financial problems. Whilst we were introducing applied for the breathing space for Nina, we also, and here I want to stress the word together, because at this stage, a lot of our clients, and I'm sure with your guests at SOFRA or any of you who are dealing with clients with money problems, once they see us, they then think that their problem is now our problem. And in order to, it's a training or learning procedure as well as helping them, they need to also get involved. So we encourage clients, obviously those who can do so, come together with us to work out particularly their budgets and also identify how best we can maximize their income. Now, in Nina's case, once we've told her all the various options, she actually chose, and again, listen to the language I'm using. She chose, not we told or insisted, but she chose the option of death relief order. And this is after us informing her of the do's and don'ts of each of the options that's available and the impact that it can make on future credit. Next thing. Yeah. To help also maximize her income, we also introduced Nina to our help to claim team. And as I mentioned earlier on, they helped to apply for universal credit. And because she had a long-term illness, she was not getting PIP, which is the personal independence payment. So again, we also helped her to apply for PIP. And this is all about what is out there that we can tap into in order for our clients to get their full entitlement. Our clients don't know everything about the welfare benefits scenario. Most of them don't know about what they can or cannot claim for. And it's up to us advisors to be fully informing them. And that's what cash first approach is all about. Trying the best to maximize their income as well as managing their financial difficulties. What came in hand with that was also the local residence fund was applied for, and by the help of, in this case, it wasn't Sufra, it was the Trussell Trust Food Bank. We were able to offer her Nina some food vouchers. Now, the cash first approach is an extremely effective model because problems don't, as you know, happen in isolation. It can have severe consequences. Solving them stop these situations escalating. And it's about how we communicate to our clients and how we motivate them and how we keep in contact with them. We help thousands of people like Nina. And the model that we've been using, as it says here on this particular slide, 8 out of 10 people said the problem was solved following the advice. 3 in 4 of them said they could not resolve the problem without us. And that's because of lack of knowledge. Thank you, Nina. I know 1 more minute. And 8 out of 10 people said we helped them find a way forward. And in Nina's case, next slide, her way forward, it was about her anxiety was reduced, her physical health improved. She no longer needed and depending on the health services that she was, because she was able to manage herself, her long-term illness. And she felt more confident and knowledgeable about handling not only just her finances, because in what happened in terms of closing the case, once we applied for the debt relief order and it was accepted, she became debt-free. And her debt of £7,000 was actually written off, and she was no longer at risk of an enforcement action. So cash first does work. Thank you. Any questions? Do we take questions at this time, Nina?
I think let's move on, and then let's take them at the end. There's a little bit of allocated time. Thank you so much for that, Sophia. I think, yeah, sorry, I don't mean to rush you. I mean, I think all this proves is that there's just so much to say on the topic, but I think it's really important for us to kind of have that sort of guest journey and that really kind of personal story element as well. We can kind of give stats till the cows come home about the numbers of people that we're supporting, etc., but just really remembering that element of those individual stories. So thank you, Sophia. Without further ado, Mo, if you're there, I'm going to pass over to you.
Hi, good morning all. Thank you, Nina. Well, one for inviting me to speak, and hopefully we'll sort of give you, I'll be able to give you sort of a breakdown and a little bit of insight in terms of, obviously, as a local authority, some of the initiatives that we have in place at the moment that's going to help to drive this agenda forward. First, I'd like to start off by saying that from our perspective, and we've been sort of talking to the guys from Sufra and other organisations about this cash first approach, and we're very much really in support and keen to sort of promote this and make this the sort of first port of call going forward in relation to supporting the residents that we sort of all come across. And I think it's something that's going to be able to hopefully prevent in the long term people becoming reliant on the food banks, because I think, as Nina mentioned earlier, it's not sustainable to sort of continue signposting people to food banks and receiving food parcels or that sort of thing. So hopefully this is the start of reversing that trend, especially in the crisis that we found ourselves in. So I'm just going to touch upon a couple of things that are available to residents here in Brent in terms of trying to really develop and address the cash first approach. Firstly, Neela touched upon it earlier, which is around the additional support that we provide to the guests of Sufra Food Bank. Once they've reached, obviously, their 6th parcel, they're referred back to one of our advisors who will sort of speak to them and try and get to the bottom of what the root cause issues are that have put them in the situation that they find themselves in, and then sort of go about doing all of the other things that Sophia mentioned, and Nina also talked about in relation to maximising people's income, whether it be accessing benefits, grants that are available, and whatever other measures we have in place, reducing their debt. We sometimes obviously refer them to our debt advisors, etc. So that's something that I think has really made a big difference over the last sort of 6 to 8 months, I think, since it's been in place. And I think that will continue to sort of have a big impact, and we'll hopefully really start to see the benefits of that in the coming months, once we're able to obviously really have some significant data to sort of look back upon. So that's one way that we're sort of, as a team specifically, trying to sort of promote that cash first approach. Secondly, we have access to emergency food and supermarket vouchers, as well as fuel vouchers. So in the first instance, there are some people that obviously find themselves in an emergency situation as a one-off. It might be that they, have had a major expense that they weren't expected, that's just sort of come about, that's meant that they've been sort of a little bit short of cash for that particular period, and they might not necessarily require the support of the food bank and food parcels, and it's just that they need some support for that particular week or those particular couple of weeks. So we have access to supermarket vouchers that we can issue as an emergency one-off in those situations, that will then prevent those particular people from having to access the food bank. So that's one way that we can try and sort of address and minimise people that find themselves in those situations. And we also have access to emergency fuel vouchers for similar reasons. So anybody can refer, people to us who you think fit that particular bill, and we can try and support them by providing those emergency vouchers as a one-off sort of situation. Our most sort of significant cash first initiative, obviously, as a result of the pandemic, has been the introduction of the Resident Support Fund, and that's been obviously the council's major response to trying to address the serious financial difficulties that people find themselves in, where people are obviously able to apply for a grant to support them in whatever financial sort of circumstances they find themselves in, whether it be rent arrears, council tax arrears, utility arrears, and any other basically type of significant arrears that have come about as a result of the pandemic during this period. And there's no sort of significant top end, but obviously it's assessed based on the evidence that's been able that residents are able to provide as in relation to their need. And I know obviously people have been issued of grants upward of £12,000–13,000 to sort of clear historical arrears as a result of the pandemic, as well as supporting them going forward. Their residents are also able to apply for a digital package. So if they want to be able to support themselves going forward, they can apply for a laptop and a package of access to broadband for a year. And hopefully that's something that's going to continue to be available long into the future, because I think obviously as things go more digital, it's going to become pressing that people have access to those type of things. So the Resident Support Fund has become a major contributing factor to hopefully moving forward that cash first agenda and having real access to sort of that cash that's available to them. Going forward, hopefully and I'll be sending out details of this once hopefully we've got this in place going forward. Brent Hub's advisors, as well as a number of other officers within the council, are going to directly be able to approve grants of up to £1,500. And hopefully that will significantly, because obviously I know that's one thing has been, the length of time it takes for people to actually make an application to when it's awarded. So you'll be able to hopefully signpost people to come and speak to one of our advisors who will help people complete the application, and providing that all the evidence can be submitted that's required. In principle, it can be approved by our advisors there and then, with then payment hopefully processed and issued within a few days to a week. So hopefully going forward, that's going to have a significant bearing on especially those urgent, immediate sort of situations that people find themselves in. So our advisors, hopefully, we're going to be in a position to be able to make those approvals very, very, very quickly, and I'll provide details of that once that's all been confirmed. The other area that we're looking to sort of direct people and promote going forward is the credit unions and access to obviously interest-free and low-interest ethical loans, because if obviously people aren't able to receive or be awarded the grants directly, there's the opportunity to consolidate any debts that they have with obviously an ethical loan provider that's hopefully going to be able to be in a position to support them as opposed to obviously chasing them for money. And we're sort of talking to some of the credit unions about hosting surgeries within the hubs, so that people who obviously don't have access to digital devices can actually come and speak to someone directly and be able to make applications and be supported in that way. So again, once we've got details about that, I'll be sort of distributing that and making everybody aware. And then finally, the sort of other long-term sort of solution that's going to be introduced by the council is a package of financial upskilling. So not only having the opportunity to access cash directly, but also support people to manage their money better, and be able to sort of help themselves as opposed to relying on grants and cash going forward. So a policy is currently being worked on around initiatives that's going to promote people being able to sort of manage their money a lot better. So I know there's a suggestion that we're going to be supporting the rollout of money mentors across the borough, and that type of thing, working with some of our partner organisations to expand some of the programs that they have in place to support people in that way. So that's hopefully something that's going to be coming up, and you're going to be hearing about very shortly as well. Hopefully that's sort of given you a quick sort of snapshot. I'm conscious of time, so I don't want to take up too much time, and we're going to give opportunity for people to ask questions. But yeah, so hopefully that's sort of given you a rounded view as some of the ways that we're trying to promote the cash first, and we're really keen to sort of work with all of you, as well as our residents to sort of address the issue and support people in the best way that we can.
Thank you very much, Mo. I'll remove the spotlight from you. Thank you. That was really interesting. And I hopefully after this, maybe I'll see if I can get some literature from you outlining kind of the eligibility criteria for some of those bits as well. And we can share that round. I'm really mindful of time. And so Sabine, kind of by virtue of being last on the agenda, I'm going to go to you now. And then hopefully we will still have a couple of minutes at the end for questions. I know there's a few people that want to share some of their the projects and things that they've got going on as well at the moment. So Sabine from the Independent Food Aid Network, take it away. Thank you,
everyone. I'll be speedy.
Thank you.
It's been brilliant to hear from Nina and Sophia and Mo just fantastic event, and really pleased to hear all of this talk of a cash first approach to food insecurity, which is absolutely fundamental to our work at IFAN. We're a network of independent food aid providers, mostly independent food banks operating across the whole of the UK. And our vision is of a society without the need for charitable food aid, and a cash first approach to food insecurity is what that's all about. Would you mind going to the next slide, please, Nina? This is what a cash first approach to food insecurity looks like for us. So as you've heard from Nina, millions and millions of food parcels have been distributed to people unable to afford food over the last 12 to 15 years, but we're not seeing food insecurity levels diminish whatsoever. In fact, they're getting worse and worse. We know that shopping vouchers can be a good alternative, but not a cash first alternative, but a better alternative in terms of people's dignity and choice. There are also charitable cash grants available. Some of our members are now distributing cash grants in that way as charities. But ideally, we want to see a functioning social security system with social security payments that match the cost of living, as well as fair wages and job security, and statutory cash grants, crisis grants available from the local authority for when somebody has a financial crisis. So, ideally, there'll be no need for charitable food aid at all. A lot of this change needs to happen at a central level. Systemic change needs to happen, but there's much that we can do at a local level. And this is where the Worrying About Money leaflet fits in. Next slide, please, Nina. We've been working with stakeholders and local authorities across Scotland, England and Wales, and now Northern Ireland actually, to co-produce what we call cash first referral leaflets, or Worrying About Money leaflets. These resources are based on learning from Scotland's A Menu for Change project, and they involve 3 straightforward steps that I'll detail in a moment, but that aim to help people facing money worries and financial crisis, but also to help support frontline workers and volunteers who are in the position of guiding people who need support. Next slide, please, Nina. Many of you will have seen the Brent Worrying About Money leaflet, but just in case you haven't, I'll just outline the steps. So the first step outlines the problem that someone might be facing if they're facing a money worries or a financial crisis. Step 2 lists the options that should or could help someone to reduce those worries and that crisis. Next slide, please, Nina. And step 3 is where the local information that we work together to put together with stakeholders is listed. So any cash first options that people can access will be found, and advice will be given by these organisations listed. And we link with those numbers, that numbering system, we link back up to the options that you've just seen in step 2. We also list other organisations that may be able to help people with associated problems that they might be facing linked to financial crisis and money worries. And we're always keen to include in particular areas where it's needed signposting for people who are with no recourse to public funds, because we know the rest of the leaflet isn't necessarily useful for those people. Next slide, please, Nina. So this is a nationwide project, as Nina told you, and we've published leaflets now for 47 local authorities in Scotland, England and Wales, and we're working in a further 50 at the moment. These leaflets are aimed at people who are struggling, but we want to reach people before they get to the point that they don't know where to turn for help. So we're making sure, if we can, that these leaflets reach schools, GP surgeries, and any agencies that might normally refer into food banks. So the prioritisation over advice towards income max is there, and people are aware that they can get help without finding themselves at crisis point with nowhere else to turn but a food bank. We have had, in terms of evaluation, we've commissioned ScotSend in Scotland to evaluate the impact of the leaflets through qualitative research in Scotland, and that report is actually being published today, so it will be online later this afternoon. And just to flag really that this leaflet is not just a resource in terms of information, but it's a tool in which we can start having conversations around why the cash first approach to food insecurity is so fundamental in turning things around and as Mo said, reversing this trend of institutionalization of food banking. And it's a way of thinking about how to improve local cash first options that might be available. Training sessions have been developed linked to the leaflet, and this is something that we can take forward potentially in Brent, as we have done in other areas. Those training sessions help volunteers and frontline workers to use the leaflet and maybe gain the confidence in having initial conversations with people about money worries and helping them find those routes towards cash first support. We've been running launch events like this one, where we can reach out to referral agents and just spread the word about these leaflets. And in some areas, we've been able to start conversations, important conversations with local authorities around improving the cash first offer available through the council. Next slide, please, Nina. So you can order, I think, the leaflets through Nina, but you can also fill in the order form that's on our main link for the Cash First referral leaflets. And just to make you aware that we're hoping to produce a leaflet in Arabic soon, and there'll be a poster version with a QR code in the corner available soon. And there's also a digital format being produced for the leaflet. If you've got any questions, please get in touch. And I'm here for questions if there's time later on. Thanks so much for having me, Nina.
Thank you very much. Thanks so much. Oh, can you hear me? Yeah, I'm back. Thank you very much, Sabine. It's really interesting. It's always really good to kind of contextualize what we're doing. And I think sometimes it might even seem a little bit radical, but actually, you know, these conversations that we're having are part of a kind of a really, you know, yeah, like you say, a nationwide conversation. So if it's okay, I'd like to go to the chat box. There's a few questions. I'll kind of work my way backwards, if that makes sense, if everyone's okay with that. Just so we can whiz through some of these questions, and then we'll have a few people that wanted to introduce or just flag up some of the things that they've got going on this month that kind of fit into this remit. Susan from Elsley Primary School asked to Mo, what is the best way to make a referral or signpost to some of the options that you outlined? I think that's quite important. Mo, are you still there?
Yeah, still here. Yeah, no, obviously we've got our phone line, and I know sometimes obviously it can be challenging for people to get through to us. We've now got all of our hubs sort of operational on a face-to-face basis, and they're all sort of drop-in, so no appointments are required. Full details of our timetable and when we're operational and where are available on our website, brenthubs.com. So anybody can come and visit us, and we'll be able to support them with any of the initiatives that I sort of mentioned earlier in that way. If there are sort of urgent, immediate, pressing emergency situations, I'm more than happy for people to contact me directly and email myself and the coordinators, and then we can try and obviously support in the best way that we can. But obviously bear in mind that we're not going to be able to sort of take on 1 million referrals in that way. But if there are sort of urgent pressing issues, then I'm more than happy for us to do that.
Perfect. I'll share those details in a follow-up email as well. I think Pat from Advice for Renters wanted to flag up some of the pool fuel.
Nina, you are an absolute superstar, Angel. Thank you.
Can't say it, fuel poverty.
Neither can I, don't worry. So we're one of the organisations that you'll find on the leaflet, and we not only take a whole person approach, but also a whole community approach. So in addition to supporting all of our vulnerable clients, we're also here Advice for Renters money to support you as organisations to replicate and cascade a lot of the financial capability initiatives that we already have achieved successfully. But I just really quickly wanted to highlight, next Friday is Fuel Poverty Awareness Day, and we're hosting a massive event at Brent Civic Centre. This is all terribly last minute because we only got confirmation and the go ahead on Monday. So the event is for anybody, any of your clients that's struggling with their utility bills, or just people that have just had a bit of an income shock, but you know their bills have just doubled in terms of their utilities. So we'll have social prescribers down there, green doctors, the National Energy Action will be issuing vouchers, knowledge of grants, that sort of thing. Shine London will be down there. All three of those are customer utility organisations. We have got Advice for Renters money, that's me of course down there, and Kevin from the Equitable Way also offering additional debt advice for people that have more complex debt than just having utility arrears. We'll have the social prescribers down there. We've got Andrea from CO2Go, which is the Brent Offset Carbon Fund, so that clusters of households can actually get together and see how they can access grants for environmental improvements to make their homes more economic to heat. So what I'm begging you to do, and I will forward the information to Nina, is if you could get this out as broadly as possible, because we've got such a fantastic event, but we've got such a limited time to actually promote it to the people that really need it. I would be so incredibly grateful. So thanks ever so much. I will shut up, Nina. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you,
I'll
Pat.
see you later. I've got some flyers to drop off for you in a minute.
Brilliant. See you in a bit. I'm really aware of time. I'd just like to pass over to Christians Against Poverty as well, if you're still there, Emma, because there was something you wanted to flag around an event you've got running as well.
Hello, everybody. Yes, we already work with Pat, who we just heard about, to run the CAP Money course. So that also includes just sort of how to budget. We've got a sort of online tool that we can that we offer people. So we've got the next course will actually be in January, and it may well be based in person with Pat at Pat's place, but we also have them at St Gabriel's in Cricklewood, and we also do them online. And please refer to us, any guests that are needing to become debt free, and we'd really love to be able to refer some of the clients that come to us who need things that are beyond our service of helping them to become debt free. So great to be partnering with you all. Thank you very much for setting up this session, Nina.
Thank you, Emma. In answer to your question, Nikki, I think the advice for renter service isn't Brent specific, so I'm going to answer that for Pat, because I don't think she's still on the call. I think, yes, it's open to anyone, even non-Brent residents. I don't know if anyone has any last questions. If not, then I think I'll wrap up. So just a really big thank you to our speakers. So thank you to Sophia, to Mo, and to Sabine for some really useful presentations. We've got some really interesting takeaways. As I said at the beginning, if you have any information to share, then please do send me through any literature, and I'm happy to circulate in an email to everyone, just so that we can all kind of take a bit of time and read it at our leisure. And yeah, I mean, the kind of most efficient way for us to work is definitely all in partnership with each other. So really kind of promoting the events and all working towards a common goal is going to kind of result in a lot more change for everyone that we're supporting. So thank you very much, everyone. And sorry if it felt a little bit rushed, but with a minute to spare, have a lovely morning. Take care. Lovely to see you all.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Cheers all. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.